The poor little girl screamed desperately, "Doctor, please help him." But when the doctor examined the billionaire's son, his face went pale. This child has been poisoned. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The scorching afternoon sun beat down hard on Riverside Park as 7-year-old Sofia Rodriguez searched through the trash cans for anything of value. Her worn-out sneakers, 3 sizes too big for her feet, slapped against the cracked pavement as she moved from bench to bench. Most people hurried past her, avoiding eye contact with the little girl whose clothes told the story of countless nights on the streets. But Sofia wasn't like most homeless children. Behind her tired brown eyes lived the wisdom of her late grandmother Carmen, a renowned healer who had taught her the ancestral secrets of healing before succumbing to illness 2 years ago. "Mija," her grandmother used to whisper, "your hands carry magic, and your heart sees what others cannot." As Sofia rounded the corner near the playground, she froze. A small boy with neatly combed blonde hair lay motionless beside the swing set. His expensive clothes contrasted sharply with the dirt beneath him. His lips had turned an unusual blue-purple color, and his breathing was shallow and labored. "Hey, wake up!" Sofia knelt beside him, her small hands instinctively checking his pulse the way her grandmother had taught her. The boy's skin was cold and clammy, and there was a strange, bitter smell on his breath, something that made her stomach clench with recognition. Without hesitation, Sofia scooped the boy into her arms, surprised by how light he seemed. She had carried her grandmother many times when the elderly woman was too weak to walk, so this 7-year-old child was manageable, even for her small frame. "St. Vincent Hospital," she gasped as she ran, remembering the large building 6 blocks away. People stared as the raggedly dressed girl ran through the streets, holding an unconscious child who clearly didn't belong to her world. "Help! Someone help!" Sofia burst through the emergency room doors, her voice cutting through the typical hospital chaos. "This boy is dying! Doctor!" Dr. Amanda Silva, a veteran emergency physician, rushed over immediately. One look at the child's symptoms triggered alarms in her medical training. "Get a gurney now," she shouted to the nurses. "What happened to him?" she asked Sofia while checking the boy's vital signs. "I found him in the park," Sofia gasped, still trying to catch her breath. "But doctor, I think—" "Honey, stand back and let us work," Dr. Silva interrupted, not unkindly, but with the urgency of someone trying to save a life. As the medical team wheeled the boy into the treatment room, Sofia watched through the window. Dr. Silva was drawing blood, running tests, her face growing more concerned with each passing minute. After what seemed like hours, the doctor emerged, her expression grim. "This child has been poisoned," Dr. Silva announced to her colleague. "Blood work shows traces of oleander extract combined with something else I can't identify. It's extremely rare and highly sophisticated." Sofia's heart almost stopped. She knew this combination. Her grandmother had warned her about it many times. It was called La Muerte Silenciosa, the silent death, a poison so rare that only someone with deep knowledge of toxic plants would know how to create it. But as Dr. Silva continued discussing treatment options with growing desperation, Sofia realized something terrifying. They were treating it wrong. Standard protocols wouldn't work for this particular combination. She had seen her grandmother neutralize this exact poison once before, when a rival healer tried to kill her. That's when the hospital doors burst open violently and a tall, well-dressed man in an expensive suit rushed in, his face wild with panic. "Where is my son? Where is Tommy Anderson?" he demanded. Michael Anderson, CEO of Anderson Enterprises, had never felt so helpless in his life. His normally perfectly styled hair was disheveled, his tie crooked, and his hands trembled as he demanded answers from everyone in a white coat. The man who controlled a billion-dollar empire was completely powerless when it came to saving his most precious treasure. "Mr. Anderson, please calm down, Dr. Ni." Silva approached him carefully, her voice firm despite the chaos around them. "Your son Tommy is in critical condition. We believe he's been poisoned with a rare plant extract." "Poisoned?" Michael's voice cracked, the word seeming strange and impossible on his tongue. How is that possible? He was with his nanny at the park. Helena has worked with our family for 3 years. She loves Tommy like he's her own son. Sophia watched from the corner where a nurse had gently guided her, still clutching her worn backpack against her chest. Through the treatment room window, she could see Tommy's small body connected to multiple machines, tubes going into his arms, his face pale as winter snow. The monitors beeped frantically, telling the story of a little boy fighting for his life. Standard treatments aren't working, Dr. Silva continued, her voice heavy with concern and professional frustration. We've contacted poison control. Several specialists from Johns Hopkins have even called the CDC. But this combination is unlike anything we've encountered in 20 years of emergency medicine. Michael began pacing like a caged animal. His expensive Italian shoes squeaked against the hospital linoleum. Money is no object. Fly in specialists from anywhere in the world. Charter jets. Hire the best doctors. Mr. Anderson? Dr. Silva interrupted gently. This isn't about money. We simply don't have enough time to wait for outside help. Tommy's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Sophia took a deep breath and stepped forward, her small voice cutting through the adult's conversation. Excuse me, sir. Michael barely glanced at her, his attention focused on barking orders into his phone to various assistants. Not now, honey. This is very serious. But I know what's wrong with your son, Sophia persisted, her voice getting stronger with each word. The doctors are treating him wrong. They're giving him medicine that won't help. Dr. Silva looked down at the small girl with tired kindness, the way medical professionals learn to talk to children in crisis situations. Honey, we really appreciate that you brought Tommy in. You probably saved his life by bringing him here so quickly, but medicine is very complicated. It's la muerte silenciosa, Sophia interrupted, the Spanish words falling from her lips like an ancestral prayer her grandmother had taught her. The silent death. Oleander mixed with castor beans and something else. Probably foxglove. My grandmother taught me about this exact poison. The room fell completely silent, except for the constant beeping of Tommy's monitors. Dr. Silva's eyes widened slightly. These were indeed the exact compounds they had found in the blood work, plus an unidentified substance that had left the lab technicians puzzled for the past hour. Michael finally looked directly at Sophia, seeing her clearly for the first time since he arrived. What he saw was a small girl with intelligent brown eyes, wearing clothes that had seen better days, but carrying herself with a dignity that spoke of inner strength. Who exactly are you? My name is Sofia Rodriguez, she said, meeting Michael's intense blue eyes without blinking or looking away. I lived with my grandmother Carmen until she died 2 years ago. She was a healer. She taught me about plants and medicines and poisons because sometimes bad people use them against healers like us. Michael knelt down to Sophia's level, his business instincts recognizing something authentic in this child's demeanor. In his world of corporate negotiations and million-dollar deals, he had learned to read people quickly and accurately. This little girl wasn't lying or trying to get attention. She was deadly serious. You're telling me that a 7-year-old homeless child knows something that my team of doctors, people who went to medical school for years, don't know? Mr. Anderson, Dr. Silva interjected gently, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to dealing with desperate family members. I understand your desperation, but we can't. How do you know what poison this is? Michael asked Sophia directly, ignoring the doctor's protests. How can you be so certain? Sophia's voice became lower, more serious, carrying a weight no child should have to bear. Because someone tried to kill my grandmother with the same exact combination of poison 2 years ago. Another healer who was jealous of her reputation and success. Abuela survived because she knew the antidote, but it left her very, very sick for months. That's when she started teaching me everything she knew, all her remedies, all her knowledge, in case something happened to her. Dr. Silva looked skeptical, but curious. Child, what makes you think this is the same poison? Sophia pulled a small, worn notebook from her backpack, its pages yellowed with age and use. Because my grandmother wrote down every symptom, every stage of the poisoning, the blue lips, the shallow breathing, the cold skin, the sweet and bitter smell on the breath. And she wrote down what the doctors tried that didn't work. Exactly what you're trying now. Michael studied Sophia's face intently. There was no deception there, no childish fantasy or attention-seeking behavior, just desperate sincerity and knowledge that seemed impossible for someone her age. "Tommy is getting worse," Dr. Silver announced as the monitors began beeping more urgently. "His heart rate is dropping to dangerous levels and his respiratory system is starting to fail. We're looking at complete organ failure within the next few hours." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Complete organ failure. His son, his brilliant and funny 7-year-old son, who still believed in superheroes and wanted to be a scientist when he grew up, was dying. Michael made a decision that went against every logical bone in his body. "Sophia, what would your grandmother have done? What would she do now if she were here?" Sophia's eyes lit up with hope for the first time since finding Tommy unconscious in the park. She would have made a specific tea to neutralize the poison and help his body fight back. But it has to be prepared exactly right, with exact measurements, or it won't work. Some of the plants are very dangerous. If you get the amounts wrong, they could kill him faster than the poison. "This is highly irregular and potentially dangerous," Dr. Silver protested, her medical training fighting against the reality of Tommy's declining condition. "We can't let a child administer unproven remedies to a critically ill patient." "Doctor," Michael said firmly, rising to his full height and using the voice that had built his business empire. "You just told me my son will be dead in a few hours, and you've admitted your treatments aren't working. What exactly do I have to lose?" Sophia clutched her grandmother's notebook tighter. "I need specific plants from a botanica, a Mexican herb shop. There's one about 10 minutes from here on Roosevelt Avenue, but some of these plants are very expensive, and I don't have any money." Michael was already reaching for his phone and his platinum credit card. "Money is not a problem. My driver will take you wherever you need to go, but I'm coming with you." 28 minutes later, Sophia emerged from Botanica La Esperanza with 2 paper bags full of mysterious-looking dried herbs, roots, and flowers. Michael had watched in complete amazement as she conversed fluently in rapid Spanish with the elderly owner, describing symptoms and plant combinations with the precision of someone who had studied herbal medicine for decades, not years. The owner, a weathered woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, had looked at Sophia with recognition and respect. "Tú eres la nietecita de Carmen, verdad?" She was a great healer. "I can see her wisdom in your eyes, mija." Back at the hospital, Dr. Silva reluctantly allowed them to use a small kitchen area typically reserved for staff meal preparation. "I want to make absolutely clear," she said sternly, her medical license weighing on her shoulders. "This goes against every medical protocol and ethical guideline I've ever learned. But given Tommy's rapidly deteriorating condition and the fact that we're out of conventional options," Sophia had already begun organizing her ingredients on the stainless steel counter with practiced efficiency, arranging them in a specific pattern that seemed to make sense only to her. "First, we need to prepare the base with white sage and chamomile to protect the stomach lining from the strong medicines," she explained, measuring dried leaves with the precision of a pharmacist. "Then we add mint to help the liver process the toxins and milk thistle to protect the kidneys." Michael watched completely mesmerized as this little girl worked with the confidence and knowledge of someone who had done this life-or-death preparation before. Her small hands moved with certainty, measuring and mixing with an expertise that defied her age. "Sophia," he said quietly, not wanting to break her concentration, "how did someone so young end up living completely alone on the streets?" Sophia's hands never stopped working as she spoke, grinding herbs with a small mortar and pestle she had pulled from her backpack. "After Abuela died, social services tried to put me in a foster family. The first family seemed nice when the social worker was there, but they weren't kind when she left. They locked me in a closet when I cried for my grandmother, and they said I was possessed by the devil because I knew things about plants and healing. Michael felt his heart clench with a mixture of anger and sadness. So you ran away. I had to run away. They were going to send me to a place for problem children where they would make me forget everything my grandmother taught me. I couldn't let that happen. Abuela made me promise to keep her knowledge alive. Sophia looked at him with eyes much older than her 7 years. I've been taking care of myself for 8 months. 8 months. The reality hit Michael like a hammer. This extraordinary child had been surviving on the streets since she was only 6 years old, keeping herself fed and safe while preserving ancestral healing knowledge. Sophia returned to her preparation, now working with what looked like ordinary dried flowers. The foxglove is the most complicated part of the whole remedy, she explained, her voice taking on the teaching tone her grandmother had used with her. Too little, and it won't neutralize the cardiac depression caused by the oleander. Too much, and it will stop the heart completely. There's maybe a difference of 2 or 3 leaves between saving his life and killing him. Doctor. Silva leaned closer, her medical curiosity finally overcoming her skepticism. She had to admit, this child's knowledge of plant pharmacology was more sophisticated than most medical students. How much exactly? What's the precise dosage? Sophia consulted her grandmother's notebook, running her little finger along the faded Spanish handwriting that seemed to have been written with great care and love. For a child, his size and weight, exactly 12 mature leaves ground to the finest powder possible, mixed into the tea at the exact moment it finishes brewing. As the tea completed its careful preparation, Tommy's monitors showed he was entering complete systemic failure. His lips had turned almost black, his breathing was barely detectable, and his heart rhythm was becoming increasingly erratic. "We're losing him, Dr. Yill," Silva announced with the urgency of someone who had watched too many children die. "His vital signs are plummeting." Sophia grabbed the still warm cup with both hands, her face determined. "I need to give this to him now while it's still the right temperature. If it gets too cool, the medicine won't absorb properly. Getting an unconscious child to drink herbal tea should have been medically impossible." But Sophia seemed to know exactly what to do, moving with the confidence of someone who had learned from the best. She tilted Tommy's head at a precise angle that kept his airway clear and used a small medical syringe she had asked Dr. Silva to provide to slowly and carefully administer the liquid, pausing between small amounts to ensure he could swallow without choking. "In 20 minutes, color should start returning to his lips," Sophia whispered, her small hand resting gently on Tommy's forehead in a gesture that reminded Michael of every loving mother's touch he had ever seen. "In 1 hour, his breathing will become visibly stronger and deeper. In 3 hours, if the remedy works properly, he should wake up and be able to speak." Michael found himself holding his breath along with everyone else crowded into the small room. 3 nurses, 2 doctors, a respiratory therapist, and a desperate father watched Tommy Anderson as if they could bring life back to his small body through sheer collective attention and hope. The wait was excruciating. Michael checked his watch obsessively, counting every minute, every second. He found himself praying to a God he hadn't spoken to since his own childhood, making desperate bargains and promises. 18 minutes after the last drop of tea had been administered, "Doctor," Silva audibly gasped. "His oxygen saturation is improving. It just jumped from 78% to 85%. At 22 minutes, Tommy's lips began showing the first traces of pink instead of that terrifying blue-black color that made him look like a corpse. 37 minutes, his breathing became visibly deeper and more regular, his chest rising and falling with a rhythm that seemed almost normal. 45 minutes, the heart monitor began showing a strong, steady rhythm instead of the weak, irregular beats that had been failing just an hour before. "I can't believe what I'm seeing," Dr. Silva murmured, looking at the monitors with complete medical wonder. "His vital signs aren't just stabilizing, they're actually returning to normal levels. In 20 years of emergency medicine, I've never seen such a dramatic recovery." Michael felt tears he didn't know he was holding finally stream down his cheeks, running unashamed down his face and dripping onto his expensive suit. "Sophia, I don't even know how to begin to thank you. You gave me back my son's life." Sophia was still focused intently on Tommy, checking his pulse the way her grandmother had taught her, counting the beats and feeling for strength and regularity. "Don't thank me yet, Mr. Anderson. We need to make sure the poison is completely neutralized and out of his system. Sometimes, with this particular combination, it can come back stronger if the person's immune system is weak or if they have other health problems." But as everyone watched in amazement, Tommy's color continued to improve steadily. His breathing became strong and regular. The heart monitor showed a rhythm that became more normal and healthy with each passing minute, as if they were watching time-lapse photography of a miraculous healing. 2 hours and 47 minutes after drinking Sophia's carefully prepared remedy, Tommy Anderson opened his bright blue eyes and looked directly at his father. "Dad," he whispered, his voice weak but completely clear and coherent. "What happened? Why am I in the hospital? And why does everyone look like they've been crying?" Michael nearly collapsed with relief and overwhelming gratitude as he took his son's small hand in his. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. And you're going to be perfectly fine." Tommy's curious gaze turned to Sophia, who stood quietly nearby, still holding her grandmother's precious notebook. "Who is that girl? She has very kind eyes. She looks like an angel my mom used to tell me about." Sophia smiled genuinely for the first time since Michael had met her, her whole face lighting up with joy at seeing Tommy alert and talking. "I'm Sophia. I'm the one who found you in the park and brought you here for the doctors to help you." Tommy studied her with the serious attention children give to important things. "Thank you for saving me, Sophia. That was very brave." In the following hours, as Tommy's strength returned steadily and he was able to sit up and drink water on his own, Michael found himself studying Sophia with completely new eyes. This child had not only saved his son's life through quick thinking and courage, but had demonstrated medical knowledge that had impressed even the most experienced hospital staff. Dr. Silva had told him quietly that Sophia's diagnosis and treatment had been more accurate than her entire team's initial assessment. "That little girl has an intuitive understanding of toxicology that most medical students would envy," she had said. "Where the hell did she learn all this?" "Sophia," Michael said quietly as they sat together in Tommy's room, watching the boy sleep peacefully for the first time in days. "Earlier you mentioned that someone tried to poison your grandmother with this same combination. You said you initially thought it was another healer, but then discovered it might be something more complicated." Sophia's expression became worried, and she unconsciously clutched her backpack tighter against her chest. "That's what we thought at first, that it was just professional jealousy. But after Abuela died and I was going through her things, I found papers she had hidden. She had written down things she heard during treatments, calls her patients made, conversations they had with visitors, things they said when they thought she didn't understand English well enough to follow." "Beep, what kind of conversations?" "Business things, money things." She wrote that some of her patients weren't just sick people looking for healing. They were rich and powerful people who came to her because she could help them with problems that regular doctors couldn't solve, and because they knew she would never tell their secrets to anyone. Sophia pulled a small, carefully wrapped package from the bottom of her backpack. "She made me promise to keep this safe, no matter what happened to me. She said someday someone might need to know the truth about the people she helped." Michael recognized the look of someone carrying a burden too heavy for their years. "Sophia, all this time you've been living on the streets. Where exactly have you been staying? How have you been surviving?" "Different places every night so no one can find a pattern," Sophia explained matter-of-factly. "Under highway overpasses when it's not raining, in empty buildings that haven't been torn down yet. Sometimes the church on Maple Street lets me sleep in the basement if I help clean up after evening services. I'm very good at hiding and being invisible when I need to be." The casual way she described this survival lifestyle broke Michael's heart. No child should have to develop skills in being invisible, in finding shelter wherever they could, in living like a fugitive. Mr. Anderson, Dr. Silva appeared in the doorway, her expression serious and concerned. There's something important you need to know about Tommy's poisoning. We've completed much more detailed toxicology tests, and I'm afraid this wasn't a random incident. Michael felt ice begin to form in his stomach. What do you mean? The poison was administered in a very specific and calculated dosage, enough to cause serious harm and potentially death, but delivered in a way that would cause maximum suffering. Someone wanted Tommy to become violently ill in a public location where his condition would be discovered. This was carefully planned and executed with medical precision. Michael's mind began racing through horrible possibilities. Are you saying someone deliberately targeted my 7-year-old son? Furthermore, Doctor, Silva continued, her voice grim, based on the concentration levels in his bloodstream and the way the toxins were distributed throughout his system, this wasn't something Tommy ate or drank recently. The poison was administered slowly, probably over several days, maybe even a week. Sophia sat up straighter, her young face taking on an expression of adult understanding. That means it was someone who had access to his food and drinks regularly, someone who could give him small amounts over time without him noticing, someone he trusted. Michael felt his world begin to crumble as the implications hit him. The household staff who prepared Tommy's meals, his teachers at private school, family friends who visited regularly and dined with them. And then the most horrible thought of all struck him like lightning. Sophia, you said the poison used against your grandmother was exactly the same as what almost killed Tommy. And you said your grandmother treated rich and powerful people who trusted her with their secrets. His voice dropped to little more than a whisper. What if whoever killed her is now targeting my family? What if this is connected? Sophia nodded gravely, looking much older than her 7 years should allow. My grandmother always used to say that the most dangerous enemies are those who live in your house and eat at your table, those you trust completely. At that exact moment, Michael's phone buzzed with a text message. The sender was his house manager, Patricia. Mr. Anderson, so sorry to hear about Tommy's terrible accident at the park. Helena is absolutely devastated about what happened and feels responsible since she was supposed to be watching him. She's asked for a few days off to recover from the shock and guilt. Hope you understand during this difficult time. Patricia. Michael stared at the message, his blood running completely cold. Helena had been Tommy's nanny for 3 years. She had unlimited access to his food, his room, his daily routine, his snacks, his drinks. She knew his schedule better than Michael himself. And now, at the exact moment questions were being asked about the poisoning, Helena had conveniently disappeared. Sophia was watching his face carefully. Mr. Anderson, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Michael showed her the text message. Sophia read it twice, then looked at him with eyes that contained too much knowledge about the evil people could do. She's running, Sophia said simply. People don't ask for time off when a child they love gets hurt. They stay close to make sure the child is okay. They ask how they can help. Michael realized that in the space of 1 day, a 7-year-old homeless child had not only saved his son's life, but also possibly uncovered a conspiracy that reached into his own home. Sophia, he said quietly, I think we need to call the police. Detective Maria Santos had seen many strange cases in her 15 years with the NYPD, but a 7-year-old homeless girl solving a sophisticated poisoning case wasn't something she encountered every day. She sat across from Michael and Sophia in a hospital conference room, her notepad open, and her instincts telling her this case was bigger than it appeared. Let me get this straight, Mr. Anderson, Detective Santos said, her pen hovering over her notepad. Your son's nanny, who worked for your family for 3 years with an impeccable background check, suddenly asked for time off immediately after your son nearly died from a rare poison that was administered over several days. Michael nodded gravely. Helena Rodriguez, 28 years old, originally from Guatemala, came to us through the most exclusive nanny agency in Manhattan. Her references were perfect. Her background check was spotless, and Tommy adores her. Adored, he corrected himself. Past tense, Sophia corrected quietly. People don't love someone who tries to kill them. Detective Santos studied Sophia carefully. This little girl spoke with a frankness that adults often found uncomfortable, but which Santos recognized as the voice of someone who had seen too much of the world's darkness too early. Sophia, tell me about your grandmother's papers, Santos continued. You mentioned she kept records of conversations her wealthy patients had. What exactly did she write down? Sophia carefully unwrapped the package she'd been protecting, revealing a collection of small notebooks, loose papers, and what appeared to be photographs. Abuela was very careful. She wrote everything in code, a mixture of Spanish, some indigenous words from her village in Mexico, and symbols she made up. She taught me how to read it before she died. She opened one of the notebooks to a page covered with tiny, meticulous handwriting. This entry is from about 6 months before she was poisoned. She treated a man in a very expensive suit who talked to other men about problematic business partners and permanent solutions. She wrote that they mentioned names of other healers in the city, healers who had died in accidents or become very sick. Michael felt his blood freeze. Sophia, are you saying your grandmother discovered some kind of organized effort to eliminate healers? Not just healers, Sophia said, her young voice carrying a weight of understanding that chilled everyone in the room. Abuela wrote that these men talked about anyone who knew too much about their business. Healers just happen to be perfect targets because we see people when they're desperate and scared, when they tell us secrets they wouldn't tell doctors or lawyers. Detective Santos leaned forward, her investigative instincts fully engaged. What kind of secrets? Sophia flipped through several pages, her finger tracing lines of coded text. Money hidden in other countries, businesses that weren't legal, people who were supposed to die in accidents but didn't, and something about children, rich men's sons being used to control their fathers. The implication hit Michael like a physical blow. You think Tommy was targeted not just to hurt him, but to control me, to make me vulnerable. It's a classic intimidation tactic, Detective Santos confirmed, her experience with organized crime kicking in. Hurt someone's child to demonstrate power, then approach them with demands when they're emotionally destroyed and desperate. Michael's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. The caller ID showed his head of security. Mr. Anderson, we have a problem. Helena Rodriguez's apartment has been completely cleaned out. According to neighbors, a moving truck came yesterday morning before Tommy was even found poisoned in the park. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Helena had prepared to disappear before her plan was even executed. Detective Santos, Michael said, his voice taking on the steel that had built his business empire. I want a full investigation. Unlimited resources. I want to know who Helena really is, who she's working for, and how this connects to Sophia's grandmother's murder. Sophia looked at him with eyes that seemed to know too much for a 7-year-old child. Mr. Anderson, there's one more thing. The papers I'm carrying. They're not just my grandmother's notes. She made copies of documents she found in some of her patients' homes, financial papers, photographs, contracts. She said if something happened to her, these would be evidence. Detective Santos felt her pulse quicken. Sophia, are you saying your grandmother was building a case against these people? She was scared, Sophia admitted, her voice smaller now, more like the child she really was. In the last few weeks, she kept saying she wished she had never learned to read English so well. She said some knowledge was too dangerous to carry. Michael made a decision that would change everything. Detective Santos, Sophia isn't going back to the streets. She's staying with us until this is resolved. Whoever killed her grandmother and tried to kill my son isn't getting another chance at either of them. Sophia looked surprised. Mr. Anderson, I can't. You saved my son's life, Michael interrupted firmly. Now you're family and we protect our family. But even as he said the words, Michael realized he might have just made Sophia an even bigger target. 3 days later, Sophia sat in Michael's penthouse apartment, still amazed by the luxury surrounding her. She had her own room, the first real bed she'd slept in since her grandmother died, but she couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in around them. Tommy was recovering beautifully, his natural resilience helping him bounce back faster than doctors expected. But Michael had hired private security, and Sophia noticed the bodyguards discreetly positioned around the building. "Sophia," Michael called from his office, "Detective Santos is here with some information about Helena." Sophia found them examining photographs and documents spread across Michael's massive mahogany desk. Detective Santos looked up when she entered, her expression grim. "Helena Rodriguez doesn't exist," Santos announced without preamble. "The woman who worked for you for 3 years is actually Sofia Vega, a 32-year-old Colombian national with connections to a sophisticated international organization that specializes in infiltrating wealthy families." Michael felt the ground move beneath him. Connections to what kind of organization? The kind that deals in information brokering, blackmail, and what they call influence operations, Santos explained. They place people inside wealthy homes to gather intelligence, create vulnerabilities, and when necessary, eliminate threats. Sophia pulled out her grandmother's notebooks, opening to a section she'd been studying. "Detective Santos, look at this. My grandmother wrote about a woman who came to her claiming to have female problems. But Abuela noticed her hands were too soft for someone who said she worked as a cleaning lady, and she spoke Spanish with an accent that didn't match the story she told." Santos examined the notebook entry. "What did your grandmother think?" "She thought the woman was there to learn about her other patients. Abuela wrote that she pretended to be sicker than she was and spoke only in her indigenous language during the treatment. So the woman couldn't understand what she was saying to other patients who came." Michael studied a surveillance photo of Sophia Helena that Santos had brought. "How long has this organization been operating?" "Based on our investigation with federal partners, at least 15 years, Santos replied. "They're incredibly sophisticated, deep background identities, professional training in childcare and domestic skills, psychological profiles to help them become indispensable to target families." Sophia looked up from the notebooks, her face pale. "Detective Santos, there are names here. Other families my grandmother treated. If this organization has been placing people in wealthy homes for 15 years, then there could be dozens of families who have been compromised without knowing it. We're working with the FBI to identify other potential targets," Santos said gravely. "But Sophia, there's one more thing. Your grandmother wasn't just documenting what she overheard by chance. She was actively investigating these people." Sophia's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "We found evidence in her apartment. Hidden cameras she had installed, recording equipment, copies of documents she had somehow obtained. Carmen Rodriguez was building a comprehensive case against this organization." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "That's why they killed her. She wasn't just a random healer who heard too much. She was a threat to their entire operation." Sophia clutched her grandmother's notebook tighter. "But why did they wait 2 years after killing her to come after your family?" Detective Santos exchanged a look with Michael. "Because they didn't know about you, Sophia. They didn't know Carmen had taught everything to her granddaughter and given all the evidence to you. When you saved Tommy and demonstrated your knowledge of their specific poison, I became a threat," Sophia finished, understanding flooding her young face. "They realized Abuela's investigation didn't die with her." Michael's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "The little girl has something that belongs to us. Return it, and no one else gets hurt." Detective Santos looked at the message, her hand instinctively going to her service weapon. "They know where you are. We need to move both of you to a safe location immediately." But Sophia was looking at her grandmother's notebook, her finger pointing to an entry near the end. "Detective Santos, there's one more thing. Abuela wrote about a man who came to her in the last week of her life, a man who offered her a lot of money to disappear, leave the city, and never practice healing again." "What did she tell him?" Sophia's voice was almost a whisper. "She said the spirits of her ancestors would never let her run from evil, and she wrote down his name." Michael leaned in to look at the notebook. What name? Sophia looked at them, her eyes wide with terrible understanding. Michael Anderson. The room fell silent except for the sound of Michael's world crashing down around him. That's impossible, he whispered. I never met your grandmother. Not you, Sophia said quickly, seeing his confusion. Someone using your name. Someone who knew that if something happened to her, people would think you were involved because you're rich and powerful and had contact with her granddaughter. Detective Santos was already on the phone, calling for backup, but Sophia was studying the notebook more carefully, her grandmother's code suddenly making perfect sense. Detective Santos, she said urgently, we need to leave right now. According to this, they're not just after the evidence. They're going to come after Tommy again tonight. Sophia's warning came just in time, as Detective Santos coordinated their emergency evacuation from Michael's penthouse. Security cameras caught movement in the building's parking garage. 3 figures in maintenance uniforms who definitely weren't there to fix anything. Safe house protocols are in effect, Santos barked into her radio as they ran toward the service elevator. We have multiple hostiles in the building. Michael carried a sleepy Tommy, while Sophia grabbed her backpack containing her grandmother's precious evidence. The little boy didn't fully understand why they were leaving in such a hurry, but he could sense the tension from the adults. Dad, are the bad people coming back? Tommy asked quietly. We're not going to let anyone hurt you, Michael promised, though his heart was racing with fear. These people had already gotten close enough to slowly poison his son over several days. Who knew what else they were capable of? Sophia stayed close to Detective Santos, her young mind processing the situation with a clarity that impressed the veteran officer. Detective Santos, in my grandmother's notes, she wrote that these people always have backup plans. If they can't get what they want quietly, they'll make it loud and public. What do you mean? They'll try to make it look like Mr. Anderson is the bad guy, that he killed my grandmother and tried to kill his own son for some reason. Then when we disappear or die, everyone will think it was him covering his tracks. Santos felt ice in her veins as she realized the sophisticated nature of this conspiracy. Sophia, your grandmother was extraordinarily intelligent. She wasn't just investigating criminals, she was fighting a psychological warfare operation. They reached the safe house, a nondescript apartment in Queens that the NYPD used for witness protection. But as they settled in, Sophia continued studying her grandmother's notebooks with growing urgency. Detective Santos, she said after an hour of reading, there's more. Abuela didn't just document what she heard from patients, she identified the leadership structure of this organization. Michael looked up from where he was helping Tommy get comfortable in the strange new environment. Leadership structure? Sophia opened the notebook to a page covered with what looked like a family tree or organizational chart. She figured out they're not just random criminals. They're connected to something much bigger. People in government, in business, in law enforcement. Santos felt her blood freeze. Sophia, are you saying this organization has people inside the police? According to this, they have people everywhere. Banks, hospitals, schools, police departments, even some FBI officers. Sophia's voice was matter-of-fact, but Michael could see the fear in her eyes. Abuela wrote that you can't trust anyone in an official position unless you know for certain they're clean. Michael sank into a chair, the full scope of their situation hitting him. So we can't trust the system to protect us. We're on our own. Not entirely, Sophia said, turning to another page. Abuela identified clean contacts too, people she was certain weren't compromised. There's a federal prosecutor in Washington who's investigating corruption, a journalist who specializes in organized crime, and, she paused, studying the handwriting carefully, a retired FBI agent who lives here in New York. Detective Santos leaned in to look at the names. Sophia, if your grandmother identified trustworthy federal contacts, we might be able to build a real case instead of just running and hiding. But Tommy, who had been playing quietly with toys Michael had grabbed from the apartment, suddenly spoke up. Sophia, what if the bad people find us here too? Sophia looked at the little boy she had saved, seeing her own childhood fears reflected in his eyes. Tommy, my grandmother always told me that truth is stronger than lies and love is stronger than evil. As long as we stick together and don't give up, the good people will win. Michael felt his heart break a little, hearing this 7-year-old child comfort his son with wisdom earned through unimaginable hardships. Sophia's right, he said to Tommy, and we have something the bad people don't have. What's that, Dad? Michael looked at Sophia. This extraordinary child who came into our lives and changed everything. We have each other. We're a family now, and families protect each other. But even as he said those words, Sophia was reading another entry in her grandmother's notebook, her face going pale. Detective Santos, she whispered. There's one more thing. According to this, they don't just eliminate threats. When they can't silence someone quietly, they stage accidents or suicides that are so convincing that no one asks questions. Santos felt the temperature in the room drop. What kind of accidents? Sophia's voice was almost inaudible. The kind where entire families disappear and everyone assumes they went into witness protection, but they never actually make it to safety. Outside the safe house, a van with tinted windows pulled up to the curb, its occupants watching and waiting for the right moment to make their move. The call came at 3:47 in the morning. Detective Santos answered her encrypted phone, expecting an update from her backup team. Instead, she heard a voice that made her blood freeze. Detective Santos, this is Deputy Chief Harrison. We have a problem with your witness protection situation. Sophia, who seemed to sleep with one ear open like a street animal, was instantly awake. Something in Santos's voice had changed, becoming more formal, more careful. Sir, the witnesses are secure, Santos replied. But Sophia caught her subtle hand signal. Danger. We need you to bring them to headquarters immediately. There's been a development in the case that requires immediate testimony. Santos looked at Sophia, who was silently shaking her head. Something was wrong. Sir, with respect, my orders were to maintain safe location until... Detective, you're being relieved of this assignment. Agent Morrison from the FBI is on his way to take over. Bring the witnesses to headquarters in 1 hour. The line went dead. Santos immediately began packing emergency gear. We're leaving, she whispered to Michael and Tommy. Right now. Sophia was already stuffing her grandmother's notebooks into her backpack. Detective Santos, that wasn't a real order, was it? What makes you say that? Because my grandmother wrote about this exact scenario. When they can't get to you directly, they use official channels to force you out of hiding. Michael lifted a sleepy Tommy, wrapping him in a blanket. Where are we going? Sophia pulled out one of her grandmother's notebooks, turning to a page marked with a red ribbon. There's an address here. Abuela wrote that if everything went wrong, this person could be trusted. Absolutely. Santos looked at the address. That's in Brooklyn, in a pretty rough neighborhood. My grandmother said the safest people often live in places where dangerous people don't want to go, Sophia explained. And this person has been fighting the same evil longer than anyone. As they escaped through the back exit of the safe house, Sophia's intuition proved correct. Agent Morrison and his team were already surrounding the front of the building. How did you know? Santos asked as they made their way through alleys toward the subway. Sophia's answer chilled them all. Because my grandmother wrote that they always give exactly 1 hour. Enough time for you to panic and make mistakes, but not enough time to think of a real escape plan. The address led them to a small apartment above a grocery store in Sunset Park. An elderly black woman answered the door, took one look at Sophia, and immediately pulled them inside. You must be Carmen's granddaughter, she said without preamble. I'm Rose Washington. Your grandmother and I worked together for many years. Sophia's eyes widened. You're a healer too. I'm many things, child, including someone who's been fighting the same organization that killed your grandmother. Rose locked multiple deadbolts behind them. Carmen told me before she died that if something happened to her, you would continue her work. Michael felt like he was in a dream. Mrs. Washington, what exactly was my son's grandmother investigating? Rose led them to a back room that looked like a combination of library, medical clinic, and research center. The walls were covered with photographs, documents, newspaper clippings, and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. She was documenting a conspiracy that goes back decades, Rose explained. Wealthy families being infiltrated and manipulated by an organization that specializes in collecting secrets and eliminating threats. Your family was targeted not just for money, but because Anderson Industries has defense contracts that provide access to sensitive government information. Michael felt the pieces clicking into place. They weren't just trying to control me personally. They wanted access to my company's classified projects. Sophia was studying the evidence wall with the intensity of someone much older. Mrs. Washington, my grandmother's notes mention something called the collection. What is that? Rose's expression became even more serious. Children, Mr. Anderson, the ultimate leverage. They don't just infiltrate families. They collect children from wealthy and powerful families to ensure long-term control. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Tommy wasn't just being poisoned, Michael whispered. He was being prepared for kidnapping. Rose nodded gravely. The poison was designed to make him chronically ill, dependent on medical care that only certain people could provide. Once they had him in their medical facility, he would have gradually, naturally disappeared from your life, with you being grateful for their help. Detective Santos was studying the surveillance equipment. Mrs. Washington, how long have you been documenting this? 23 years, Rose replied, since they killed my daughter for getting too close to the truth. Sophia looked at her with understanding and sympathy no child should possess. That's why you and my grandmother worked together. You both lost people you loved. And now, Rose said, looking directly at Michael, we have a chance to stop them permanently, but it's going to require something very dangerous. Michael didn't hesitate. Whatever it takes. Rose smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. Carmen always said you were a good man, Mr. Anderson. Even before she met you, she knew what kind of person you were, by the way Sophia talked about Tommy and how much you loved your son. Michael stared at her in confusion. Mrs. Washington, I never met Carmen. Sophia and I only met a few days ago. Rose and Sophia exchanged a look. Mr. Anderson, Sophia said quietly, there's something I haven't told you yet. My grandmother didn't just treat random wealthy patients. She was specifically assigned to your case 6 months ago by the same organization that sent Helena to your home. Michael felt the world tilt on its axis. What are you saying? I'm saying, Rose finished, that Carmen Rodriguez was originally sent to gather information about your family, but she chose to protect you instead of betraying you, and that decision cost her life. The revelation about Sophia's grandmother hit Michael like a physical blow, but there was no time to process the emotional complexity. Rose Washington had a plan that could expose the entire conspiracy, but it required using Tommy as bait, something that went against every paternal instinct Michael possessed. Absolutely not, Michael said firmly when Rose explained her strategy. I'm not putting my son in danger again. Sophia looked up from her grandmother's notebooks, where she'd been studying the organizational chart. Mr. Anderson, my grandmother wrote something here about Tommy specifically. She said the reason they chose your family wasn't random. Rose nodded gravely. Carmen discovered that Tommy has a very rare blood type, AB negative, with additional unique markers. There are fewer than 200 people in the world with his exact profile. Detective Santos felt ice form in her stomach. What does that mean? It means Tommy isn't just valuable for controlling Michael, Rose explained. He's valuable for medical reasons that go far beyond what we've discussed. Sophia's voice was almost a whisper as she read from her grandmother's notes. Abuela wrote that they're not just collecting children for leverage, they're collecting them for medical harvesting. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Michael felt rage and terror battle in his chest. What kind of medical harvesting? Rose's expression was grim. Bone marrow, organs, blood, anything that could save the lives of the organization's leadership or their own children. Tommy's blood type makes him particularly valuable because it's universal for certain rare diseases. So they were planning to keep him alive but use him as a living medical resource, Michael said, his voice breaking. Sophia closed the notebook and looked directly at Michael. Mr. Anderson, they're not going to stop. Even if we hide forever, even if we change our names and move to another country, they'll keep hunting us because Tommy is too valuable and I know too much. Detective Santos was pacing, her training fighting with the horrible reality they faced. Rose, what exactly is your plan? We give them what they think they want, Rose explained, pulling out surveillance equipment that looked more sophisticated than anything the police used. We let them capture Tommy, but we make sure he's protected and that we can track everything they do. Are you insane? Michael exploded. I said no. Sophia put her small hand on Michael's arm. Mr. Anderson, listen to me. My grandmother wrote about this plan. She knew that someday it might be the only way to save everyone. Rose continued calmly. Tommy would wear a tracking device that looks like a medical alert bracelet. It would have a two-way communication system. And most importantly, he'd be carrying something that would expose their entire operation the moment they brought him to their main facility. What kind of something? Sophia opened her backpack and pulled out a small device that looked like an inhaler. My grandmother built this before she died. It's designed to release an aerosol that marks everyone in a room with a chemical that shows up under special UV light. Once marked, law enforcement can identify all the organization members no matter where they go. Michael stared at the device. Your grandmother built a chemical tracking system? Abuela was a chemist before she became a healer, Sophia explained. She came to America with a degree in biochemistry, but her English wasn't good enough for professional jobs, so she used her knowledge to help people as a healer. Rose activated several pieces of monitoring equipment. Carmen spent 2 years developing this plan. Tommy would be protected, the organization would be exposed, and most importantly, hundreds of other families would be saved. Detective Santos looked at the surveillance setup. Rose, this is incredibly sophisticated. How do you have access to this equipment? Rose smiled for the first time since they'd known her. Because I'm not just a healer, detective. I'm a retired CIA operative who's been conducting an unauthorized investigation of this organization for over 2 decades. Michael felt his understanding of everything shift again. The government knows about this? Certain elements within the government are this organization, Rose replied. That's why Carmen and I had to work outside official channels. That's why Detective Santos couldn't trust her own chain of command. Sophia was studying Tommy, who had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted by the stress and uncertainty of the past few days. Tommy is stronger than people think. He survived the poisoning because he has a fighter's spirit. He could do this. Michael knelt beside his son, watching Tommy sleep peacefully despite everything that had happened. Tommy, can you wake up for a minute? We need to talk to you about something very important. Tommy opened his blue eyes, immediately alert despite having been asleep moments before. Dad, are we going to fight the bad people now? The question, asked with such innocent determination, broke Michael's heart and filled him with pride at the same time. Tommy, there's something very dangerous we might need to do to keep you safe and protect other children like you. But it means you'd have to be very brave. Tommy sat up, looking more serious than any 7-year-old should look. Sophia was brave when she saved me. I can be brave too. Sophia came and sat next to Tommy. Tommy, if we do this, you have to promise to follow the plan exactly. No trying to be a hero. No changing what we tell you to do. Just be smart and careful and trust that we'll come get you. Tommy nodded solemnly. Will you come with me? Sophia shook her head. I can't. They want to capture me too, but separately. But Tommy, I promise, we won't let anything bad happen to you. Your dad loves you too much to let you get hurt. Michael felt tears in his eyes as he realized his 7-year-old son was about to voluntarily enter the most dangerous situation imaginable, and that a 7-year-old homeless girl had become the moral center of their entire fight for survival. Okay, Tommy said simply. When do we start? Rose began activating communication equipment that would coordinate what might be the most important sting operation in decades. "We start tomorrow, and if this works, we're going to save a lot of families." But Sophia was reading the final pages of her grandmother's notebook, and her face had gone pale. "Mrs. Washington, there's one more thing. Something Abuela wrote in her last entry before she died." "What is it, child?" Sophia's voice was almost inaudible. "She wrote that the organization has a fail-safe plan. If they're in danger of being completely exposed, they activate something called final collection, and they take all the targets they've been monitoring and disappear permanently." Rose felt her blood freeze. "How many families are they monitoring?" Sophia counted entries in the notebook. According to this, 47 families across the United States, including children. Michael realized they weren't just fighting for Tommy's life anymore. They were fighting for the lives of dozens of children whose families had no idea they were in danger. "Then we have no choice," he said, his voice filled with grim determination. "We end this tomorrow." The plan unfolded perfectly. At 9:15 in the morning, Michael walked in Central Park with Tommy, both wearing hidden cameras and tracking devices. Sophia watched from the surveillance van, clutching her grandmother's chemical tracking device. "Dad, I'm scared," Tommy whispered. "I know, buddy, but Sophia and Rose are watching. You're never alone." No, the kidnapping happened exactly as predicted. A fake social worker approached, then men with badges appeared, taking Tommy away for a child neglect investigation. Sophia activated the aerosol device when Tommy entered an office building in the financial district. Dozens of people throughout the building were instantly marked with invisible chemical traces. "This is bigger than we thought," Rose breathed, watching the monitors. "It's a complete shadow organization." But the biggest shock came when Tommy's hidden camera revealed his interrogator. "Hello, Tommy," said a familiar voice. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Aunt Patricia is here." Michael felt his world collapse. Patricia Morrison, his house manager for 7 years, the woman who had helped raise Tommy, who had recommended Helena, sat across from his son in the organization's command center. "I don't understand," Michael whispered. "Patricia is family. She's been with us since Tommy was born." Sophia looked at him with sympathy. "My grandmother wrote about this. The deepest betrayals come from people who make themselves indispensable." On screen, Patricia spoke warmly to Tommy. "Your daddy has been keeping secrets. Did you know your blood is very special? So special it can save the lives of important people." Tommy, following his practice script, asked innocently, "What important people?" "Powerful people who make the rules. In exchange for helping them, your daddy gets to be even more successful." Michael felt sick realizing years of Patricia's manipulation. Every decision about Tommy's care had positioned him for this moment. Tommy surprised everyone with his next question. "Aunt Patricia, if this is so good, why did Helena poison me?" Patricia's warmth turned clinical. "Sometimes we must make people sick before we cure them. It teaches appreciation for good health." "Did you kill Sophia's grandmother?" Tommy asked with impressive courage. Patricia's mask dropped completely. "That old woman should have minded her own business. She should have collected information quietly, not played detective and threatened our operation. So you murdered her." "I eliminated a threat," Patricia said coldly, "just like I'm going to eliminate that street girl who's causing us problems." The FBI burst through the doors. The raid became the largest international conspiracy bust in decades. Patricia's files revealed 20 years of family infiltration using children for business leverage and medical harvesting. 3 hours later, Tommy was safe in Michael's arms. "Dad," Tommy said quietly, "Aunt Patricia mentioned other children like me, children without families to save them." Sophia looked up from where she was packing her grandmother's notebooks. "Tommy's right. There are 12 children in facilities across the country." Michael made his decision. "Then we're not done. Those children need rescue." Detective Santos smiled. "With Carmen's evidence and today's documentation, we can shut down their entire network." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "My grandmother said the most important healing happens in families. people who choose to love and protect each other, even without blood relations. Michael knelt to Sophia's level. Sofia Rodriguez, you saved my son's life, exposed this conspiracy, and showed us real courage. Mr. Anderson, you taught me that family isn't about blood or money. It's about staying together when everything goes wrong. Tommy took Sophia's hand. Sophia, will you be my real sister this time? Sophia looked at them. These people who had become her world in 1 week. Are you sure? I only know survival and healing. Michael stood with certainty. Surviving and healing is exactly what our family needs. We choose you, your home. 6 months later, Sofia Rodriguez Anderson taught Tommy to identify medicinal plants in their garden. She was passing her grandmother's knowledge to the boy who had become her brother in every way that mattered. Michael watched from the kitchen window, amazed at how this extraordinary girl had transformed their lives. The conspiracy trials were ongoing. 12 children had been rescued, and the Michael Anderson Foundation for Child Protection was safeguarding other families. Sophia, Tommy called from the garden. Tell me about Abuela Carmen and her courage. Sophia smiled peacefully. Well, mijo, she always said love is the strongest medicine in the world. Sometimes when you love someone enough, you can heal impossible things. Michael joined his children in the afternoon sunlight. Family, he had learned, wasn't about shared blood or names. It was choosing to stay together, protect each other, and heal wounds with unconditional love. As Sophia continued teaching Tommy, Michael realized that Carmen Rodriguez had given them more than wisdom and courage. She had proven that even in darkness, when evil seems overwhelming, family love can overcome anything. Sometimes the most broken people, a homeless girl and a father who nearly lost everything, create something stronger and more beautiful than anyone imagined possible. The end. If you were moved by this story of courage and family, leave a like so more people can meet Sophia and Tommy. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the heart, because we all need a little hope in our lives. What part moved you the most? Tell us in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs inspiration to never give up on their dreams and the fight for justice. Thank you for watching until the end. Your presence here means so much. Until the next story that will touch your heart.